So now I get to welcome back my other favorite journalist, Deena Shanker, to the stage. She's with Bloomberg, and she is going to sit down with Sam Kass, who has worn many, many hats. He's been a chef in the White House. He's been the senior policy advisor for nutrition policy for President Obama. He is an author, a strategist, an investor, the founder of Trove. I could go on, but I'm going to let Deena and Sam take it over. Thank you both so much. Hey, hey.
Thank you so much. Sam, good to be here with you. Thought we'd start with a fun little icebreaker, which is your last personal food waste failure.
Oh my God. First of all, hi everybody. How's it going? I didn't know she was going to ask me that. I mean, what's ironic is, you know, I'm an official United Nations 12.3 food waste champion. And man, you know, I feel like I more frequently than I should violate my own identity. Last night I threw away, you know, some potatoes and a couple pieces of rotisserie chicken that just got stuck in the back. Yeah. I'm going to admit it. It's, you know, it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, it feels bad every time, right?
Every time, and I really have this like. I have like a conversation out loud with myself. I'm like, man, this is really bad. You really got to get your shit together.
Yeah, I know that feeling. So thank you for sharing. Food waste is an issue that, you know, everyone agrees is a problem. We don't have a pro food waste lobby. There's been lots of solutions presented because the problem shows up in so many different ways. You have been in the political world, you've been in the corporate world, you are, as we just found out, a human being with your own kitchen. So why is this problem so hard to fix? Where do you see where's the friction? Is it all of the above, and why?
It didn't contest. I was like, do not make me talk about food waste anymore. I can't talk about it anymore. We gotta stop. It's just one of these issues that, like, what else is there to say? I mean, we've been talking about it for so long. It's so obvious. It is, like, as everyone says, the most obvious low-hanging fruit that we've done all the hard part of, like, getting the soil and the water and the fertilizer and growing the food and transporting and processing it and transporting it again and all the things. And, you know, in the United States, this issue plays out very differently, obviously, depending on where you are in the world. And I think the fundamental problem, you know, for us in the U.S. is we're rich. And because of our wealth, we don't value food in the way that somebody who, you know, is more resource constraint does. And I think we have fundamentally a cultural problem, as we do with, you know, so much of the issues that you've heard about today. I would argue are not just, you know, really mostly business problems or political problems, or really cultural problems that manifest themselves in our politics and our business. And food waste is certainly, you know, a shining star of that. I think there's definitely things we can do to design our lives in ways that make it, you know, easier to waste less food. Like, you know, our refrigerators are like where food goes to die. Like, that vegetable bin is like the worst thing for, you know, it's death for vegetables. Mm-hmm. We all have experienced it. And like, if you can't see it, you're not going to eat it. And that's true. And that's why marketing works. It's a fundamental truth to like why we consume what we consume. But it also plays out from food waste. So I think there's design strategies, there's cultural things that we need to just shift. And, you know, this is just one where we all have to see whatever role we're playing, and retailers do some. The reality is manufacturers actually they're pretty efficient. They're not throwing away very much. We have problems on farm, labor challenges, technology challenges, but we all have to just take our source of the waste and just decide we're going to do a better job on it.
When you talk to chefs who run restaurant kitchens, whether it's a small kitchen or a chain or whatever it is, and you bring this up to them, and these are businesses, the more money that goes into the more food that goes into the garbage, the more money that goes into the garbage. Do you find that this is an issue that they're already thinking about and looking to solve? Do you find that they want to solve it, but it really takes a rethinking of their entire menu and how they run their kitchen? Or is this just like, dude, I am trying to, get dinner on the table and serve customers. I can't even think about this right now.
I think depending on all of the above, depending on who you're talking to. I mean, look, chefs are really good at making money out of nothing, right? So many dishes we eat are actually like, French toast is just bread that was going to otherwise get thrown away. Like there's a million examples of food that is figuring out how to use old product or product that would otherwise get wasted and repurposed, and it's just cash. So I think chefs often are quite creative in that regard. And there's most chefs have some story of their chef taking the garbage can and like dumping it on the counter and being like, what the hell is going on? This is all like my profit here, and getting hardcore on their kitchen. I think like where there's a lot more like structural challenge is particularly around more institutional food service operations, hotels. Like buffets are like a disaster for food waste, but there's this expectation that we have culturally that it's like all you can eat, and if it's all you can eat, that means you got to have like it full all the time, and there's not an expectation that you can run out of the sausage. In fact, like I want to make sure I can eat as much as possible, and so if that's the mentality, then there's just a really big source of waste. So I think it plays out in kind of nuanced ways, but both the idea of portion size, which is obviously a disaster ecologically for our health and for food waste. But like, name the last time if you're running a company, like you think it's a good campaign, we're going to give you less for the same price. Like that's not a winner, trust me. So like, we have expectations now of what we expect to be on our plates or what we expect the buffet to look like. And it's companies who are really committed to trying to unwind this are having a tough time. There's good money for them because they're just throwing money out the door. But even for the ones who see it, the economic benefit and like are really committed to this issue, have a really tough time unwinding this one. Like they're struggling with it because consumers are like, nah, I want my giant heaping portion of whatever.
When you were at the White House, the Obama administration did more for food than I think many of us have. I mean, the most, right? I haven't done the math.
I would argue.
I haven't done the math, but I mean, it was the first time that food was like a national, like serving healthy meals in schools was, revolutionary and all of these things. We talked about how you brought the pollinators issue to the fore. Did food waste come up, and did it factor in when you guys were planning like a state dinner or something along or another event?
I had the awakening on the issue along with I think the country. A lot of it rooted in the Refed first report. Dan Barber also had a big impact on me when he's then coming off of that, set up his, pop-up, little restaurant serving all the waste things. And that, I think, before then, no, honestly, I wasn't conscious of it at all. It was just, we didn't have the numbers. Like, I don't think anybody had the perspective on just how much we were throwing away. And so, yeah, no, I was definitely, kind of woke up with at least what felt to me like, I mean, certainly there's plenty of people who were on this before that, but it was not at the top of the agenda from literally any advocate, any nonprofit. Nobody I ever talked to ever really was raising it with me. And it definitely was an awakening. In fact, Dan and I, probably the craziest meal I've ever been a part of, which is saying something at this point. Dan and I did his food waste lunch for like 40 heads of state at the UN ahead of COP 2021. So the head of the UN sort of gathered all these presidents to try to kind of start to organize them to make their commitments. And it was like all of them, Xi Jinping and Hollande and Merkel, like all of them were there. And we served them like a bunch of stuff from the trash. It was insane. Like, I was super jazzed. I was like feeling myself. I was like, this is incredible. So I don't know how I got us in this one, but it's gonna be great. And then the night before, I was like, what the fuck? am I doing? Like, I'm going to serve these, like, the most powerful, and they never actually had a lunch with all the leaders in one space.
I guess you gave them something to talk about.
Yeah, and it did. Like, so, but it's interesting, the impact of a meal. So, like, Christine Lagarde, who was also in there, and then she's actually an amazing powerhouse of a woman. And I would see her random things like years later. She's like, "Do you remember that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I remember that." So it does stick with people. But so I think there was a real awakening on the issue for all of us.
What do you think it would take to see it become a national political issue? I mean, even as I ask the question, it feels so distant and impossible.
Do you want my honest answer? I'm at the point where I can't not just be totally blunt. I don't think it's going to be. And I don't think like I think policy has an extraordinarily important role to play in many parts of transforming food. It is, I think, almost always overstated in terms of what it can do. We have this very nice and very neat narrative laid out by friends of mine who I have a lot of respect for. They basically say government and their subsidies are the ones that have made the food system what it is and destroying everything, and they collude with big business, and therefore everything's bad, and if we only shifted those subsidies, then everything would be fine. And it's like it's entirely untrue, unfortunately. It has no basis in actual fact. And it like leads us to think that there's a policy of the magic wand that can just solve this. And there's a boogeyman, there's good versus evil and boogeyman. It's like so much more complicated and nuanced than that. And there's some parts of truth to that. And there are some really horrible actors that I have scars from. And I think but I think so much more is much more deeply rooted in who we are, what we value as a culture. And that's the hard work. That's the slow work. That's the work that's harder to measure. And that underpins the change. And so, like, for food waste, is there a policy, like sell-by dates, really important policy that would move the needle on this issue? For sure. So it's not to say that policy isn't really, like, smart, good policy isn't really important. But, like, sell-by date is not why I threw out that chicken last night, right? It's because I wasn't, like, I'm busy. I got too much stuff going on. I'm tired, fell asleep on the couch back there, like, you know. And we're all grappling with a lot. We're all dealing with a lot. And, you know, our lives are not designed in such a ways, and we aren't valuing these issues in such a way that are leading us to make different choices sort of as a society. And so I think, like, so policy, yes, but I don't think there's going to be a big political movement on this for a bunch of reasons. But I do think we can make a ton of progress, and I do think it's like the issue that is in some ways the easiest to make progress on because, like, yeah, there's nobody fighting against this.
Right.
Right? Which is like, that's helpful. And everybody wins. Like, everybody saves money. You know, the environment's better. We can get more food to people who really need it for some of the more institutional sources of waste that, like, you could get, you know, people who don't have enough. And obviously there's a lot of people, and particularly kids in this country, don't have enough food. So, yeah, it's sort of a win-win all around, which is why you sort of get like, why are we still talking about it? Like, I can't believe we're still sitting here talking about this yet again.
What have you seen as the most successful, like, not just whether a policy, whether it's political, but also like corporate or institutional, or even change in your own home behavior? Like, what do you...
From a food waste standpoint?
Yeah.
You know, probably the one that I think has probably moved the lever that I'm aware of, and I'm not like, there's people way smarter and more knowledgeable on the details of this. So I'm sure there's things that are bigger. Compass, the biggest food service company in the world by a lot, by the way, started measuring. They just started measuring the amount of waste. They're very aggressive on this issue, and I got to give them a lot of credit. And they just started measuring what they wasted, and I don't remember the number, so do not hold me to this, but it was like some dramatic cut, like 40%. They reduced it, like basically overnight, just by measuring it and raising the consciousness amongst their cooks, like all across the country and globally. Like, you just had to pay attention to this, and people were like, oh man, like, wow, like, we didn't realize what we were throwing away. And it just dropped dramatically. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, little things like that can have a really big impact. And if we're not aware, then, you know, it's very hard to take action.
Yeah, measuring, definitely. I mean, you can't fix a problem if you can't measure it. Then how do you know how much work you have to do? Yeah. All right, now I'm going to ask you a question because we don't have too much time left. And I'm really personally interested in your answer, and probably other people in this room are too, but how has your approach to reducing food waste in your home changed once you had kids? Because I think kids really I love them, but but it's very difficult to have enough food that your kids want to eat and not too much food that ends up in the garbage because your kids refuse to eat it.
They are not helpful on this issue, like at all. You try. So my little guy, he's 5. He's a very interesting kid. He's deeply passionate about. He won't basically. I mean, he's jacked, but he refuses to eat any kind of animal protein essentially. And I serve. I basically try to not eat red meat, but I serve plenty of meat in my house and fish, and he just will not eat it. When we go, my older one is super passionate about fishing, so we go fishing. He will throw all the fish back, and he's like, my older one was like, he caught a nice bluefish. He was like, I love you, little fish, and my little guy Ralph was like, don't tell it you love it if you're gonna eat it. Like, okay. So he's very passionate about the animals. And the natural environment. We have a big garden. He's very engaged in the garden. He cares about the bugs and the worms and the bees and everything. But he's really tough on eating, and he'll even things that he tends to like. Sometimes he's like, I'm just not going to eat that. And so the only way I made progress with him was like, but let me explain to you, like that tofu that you're not going to eat tonight. Let me tell you where it comes from and all the things and the impact on the environment and. If you care about the bees, then you're going so I'm like, I'm stretching here, people. It's hard because, they're just, sometimes they're hungry, sometimes they're not, but you got to make sure you got food for them. So I can't say that they've helped if I would be keeping data, which I probably should in my own home, it would definitely have gone up since I've had kids.
When I pack their lunches and then I take them home,
and
it's like, oh, those beautiful farmers market strawberries right into the compost.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
They've been
rough.
sitting in your backpack all weekend.
Yeah.
Also, I'll just say that my daughter also doesn't like animal products. She says she is a vegetarian, except for schnitzel. So she makes it.
There you go. Nice. That's good. I respect that. That's reasonable.
Thank you so much. I think food waste is really something that we are all trying, and it's really helpful to hear that even Sam Kass sometimes has to throw some chicken away because it's really, really difficult.
It's sad, but true.
Well, thank you, Sam.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.